Hi everyone, it is Kamon Reynolds here, and let's get started again on our package versus nuke challenge, but let's make it complete. Let's install these nucleus colonies. We're going to go into the packages here in a little bit too because they need some TLC. While it was raining the last few days, I did give them a little nip of sugar because they are not able to get out and forage. We have clover just starting to bloom here in North Middle Tennessee. So there's a lot to forage, but one thing you have to realize is these packages are losing numbers every day. You get those packages and they don't have new bees emerging. They're going to before too long, and you're going to see how far along they are. However, every day between the time that you install them and the time that the first bees hatch out, they're going down in population. Not to mention, just because you have those new bees hatching out, whenever that starts, they're not forager ready. So you're not going to have a decent foraging population for quite some time. And just because your other colonies are going at it, or other mature colonies, does not mean your packages are going to be able to take advantage of the strong flows that may be going on. Always look at the combs. Read the combs just like a book, and they will tell you if the bees need feed or if they don't need feed. And sure, I would love the bees to be able to always get natural food, but if they don't have it or can't capitalize on it, that's when the beekeeper steps in and takes care of his or her bees. All right, let's get on to these nukes. Right before I do that, thanks everybody for all the kind comments. I really appreciate it. We're having finished our first giveaway and we're almost to the point where we need to do another one, so again, thank you. All right, let's get started. As you can see, there's bees all over the place. I opened up the entrances on these things, and in that way they will be able to orientate to this area. I'll probably lose a decent bit of foragers because I have the nukes made on the other side of the property, so they're going to go over there. But what I did is I took some of our other colonies that were weak and put them in the place of where these were. And so any foragers that we lose that go back to that location, those little bitty splits with the queen cells are those foragers are just going to right into those colonies and just help those little colonies along, and it'll be just fine. All right, let's start with this one. Now I'm going to do a couple different types of lids, and sorry about the sound quality. I think it's going to be better, but I'm not exactly sure yet how to use this microphone, so if I'm too loud or too soft, I'm figuring out what to do. I'm used to being very loud because of the videos. I'm going to use an inner cover on this one over here. And one thing to keep in mind with the inner cover, you have two sides on this particular type, and the flat side is used when you have a gap between your frames. And when you have a low frame rest and nothing in between, you need to just use it like this, because you still have bee space underneath between the frames, but some of the frame rests, like those metal ones I've told you about, it'll bring the frame all the way even with the box. And when you have those, that's when you need to use this side of it, so you create head space and correct bee space so they won't propolize the tops of the frames to the bottom of the inner cover. Now, we don't really use these things because it's an extra expense and it's just extra time putting them on and putting them off, but we're going to use one for this one, so let's get that out of here. And because nucleus colonies are set up, they're locked in, you can use a smoke right away, no issue. And I'd say at this point they're probably a little cantankerous. Always keep them in the shade. They can overheat, even on a cool day, especially when they're really strong. Now, I've got this little hive tool I was going to try, but looking at all those bees, I'm going to stick with what I normally do. This little hive tool is really good for mating nukes. Now, when you have your nucleus colony, make sure you don't pinch the queen, because this is a pretty small area, and for this many bees, she very well could be on the outer frame, and we definitely don't want to crush that bug. So we're going to pull this out. I like to start on this side over here, and then we're just going to grab this frame and pull that out. And there are some eggs on this side. Oh yeah, lots of larvae over here. I don't see the queen. We're going to stick this one right here. Now that we have some space, it's going to be so much easier to work with. Excuse me, bee. Oh yeah, love to see that brood right there. There's a lot of pollen in between. There's some brood over here. And we could spend all day talking about bees, but we're just going to get these things in. You know what? I'm just going to take it. I'm going to drop it down here. Excuse me, bee. Excuse me. Now, not all nukes will be this strong. But this is the way we like to give them. Alright, the queen's over here doing some laying, that's for sure. And when I get a chance, I'm going to mark the queens from the packages so we know how old they are. And also, if they get superseded, we will know, because the new queens won't have that green dot on them. Now, come on now. Thank you. I saw the queen on this side. Alright. Now, they need some feed. And they also have a lot of brood, a lot of population, so this is really good. They're going to need to draw that foundation out, but if they don't have enough feed coming in, and especially since we took them from their location and it's in the same yard, they're losing a decent bit of their foragers. Make sure you keep correct bee space. Put those frames back together. See how much easier this is in a package? And this is also why in the swarm traps, we also use frames. It just makes life so much better when you have frames. Everyone tries to reinvent the wheel, and they blame a lot of the bee problems on other things, like, oh, we're using the wrong style of equipment. That's what's wrong with, that's why the bees are not doing so good. Just give them a little drink here. But in the reality of things are, bees do really well in a lot of different situations. They do good on this pressure treated bottom board. We usually paint these things, but I didn't have time on this one. A lot of people tell you don't do that. Oh my goodness, what are you doing? Bees will do just fine on those things. There's a couple people on YouTube tell you not to use cedar. That's ridiculous. There are commercial beekeepers, and I've used cedar. Some of these guys are using thousands of cedar lids and no bee loss. Bees are very tough, except when it comes to varroa mites and no nutrition. Bees are suffering from new parasites, a few new viruses, and suffering from lack of forage. It really has very little to do with the equipment that you use. Feel free to do whatever you want. You're going to probably anyways. Alright. Now see, I use the frame feeder right away on these guys because they're locked in. You're not going to see them going over there and drowning in that feeder. Let's get them smoked down a little bit so we can put this lid on. And I'm putting the wrong lid on that one. Alright. Inner cover. Boy, this takes me back. Excuse me. The inner cover helps the beekeeper, especially with the telescoping covers, like this plastic one that I dug up. I haven't used one like this in ages. And I don't really like them. But when you have these sides here, it's hard to pry up. So if you use one of these without an inner cover, then you run into the problems of trying to pry that once they've glued it down. And even if you use correct bee space, if they have a strong flow, they're just trying to put stuff wherever they can, so they'll still tie things down. We just try to do the best that we can with the bee space to prevent them from tying things down. So you see how easy that was? That's awesome. Nucleus colonies are great. And before too long, if you get your bee operation going, even if it's just a hobby, we're going to teach you how to make your own nukes, just like this, so you can be sustainable and keep your operation growing. A lot of people are like, well, I don't really want to grow. The problem is, if you have healthy bees, they cannot help but grow. If they're thriving and healthy like they should be, they're going to reproduce. They're either going to swarm, you're either going to make splits, you can sell them, which is great, you can buy more bee equipment. And your spouse, if she's not on board or if he's not on board, are going to think your hobby actually might not be so stupid after all. Oh yeah. I've got a buddy of mine that he takes his family on a vacation every year off the extra money he makes off of just about 20 odd hives of bees. And it's a fun hobby that pays for itself. And his wife told me that she wasn't too sure about it at first, stinging insects around the house and the grandkids, but after he took her down to Florida off of some honey money, she was asking when he was going to start expanding his operation. Thriving bees have to grow. It's impossible to keep them from growing if they're healthy. You've got to take some form of action. All right. Why don't you come over here so you can see a little bit better. But you can just see how much easier this is. Now these guys have a decent bit of resources. I'm curious to see on the packages just how much they have in the way of foodstuffs. And think of all the brood that's fixing to hatch out of these nucleus colonies. So they're going to have to have more space, especially if we feed them or they have a lot of nectar coming in. They have to stick that somewhere. And so they're going to have to draw those frames. Yeah, there's larvae all down in there. It's awesome. They could use more feed though. And I know that because I'm just seeing a little bit here. I'm just seeing a little bit up in here. I'm not seeing a ton of it. I want to see more than that. So they've been locked up in these boxes though for almost 3 days now. I threw them a dab of sugar in the top just to help them out a little bit. But it's amazing what a few days, especially if colonies are kind of on the edge of not having a whole lot of food, they will slow down brood rearing. They'll do a lot of things to prevent starvation. And so you lose production that way. Nature does not always give you ideal conditions. Oh, I got a bee in my bonnet. Thank you. I really need to get a valve that's tied down. I'm just too cheap. I did get that Ultra Breeze, but it's just so stinking hot. Yeah, I really like these. These bees right here are a cross between our Italian Carney mix and Michael Palmer's, which I was telling you in the other video. There was another guy that I really trusted with good stock, and I'm not just talking good stock, uniform. You can tell that a lot of work has been put in the genetic capability of those bees. They just are very uniform. He's done a very good job bringing out the best in his bees. And you know, we're trying to do the same thing here, but he has literally been doing it longer than I've been alive, so he's got me at a disadvantage. But Michael Palmer out of Vermont, especially you northern beekeepers, you might want to look into his queens. All right, I already threw some sticks in the other one. Get some floats in there. We could fit another frame in here, but we'll get to that later once they start drawing. All right, let's get this feed. You know, and it's not going to hurt just to get a little smoke sometime. For you new beekeepers who don't really know what to look for on how much feed that your colonies need, you can get into your colonies every few days, every 3 days, just light inspections. Just a couple puffs of smoke, pull out an edge frame or two, see how they're doing feed-wise, see how they're consuming their feed, and apply a little bit more if you need to. You can store this stuff in the refrigerator, make it last a little bit longer, all that stuff. I typically don't use essential oils, one, just because it costs me money. There's a lot of research that still needs to be done on those things, and also the strong smell of essential oil can block certain pheromone production of the bees. There's a balance to everything, and I think that there are good things about essential oils, but it's mainly an expense for me, and I don't see a whole lot of upside. I've tried them in the past quite a bit. All right. See how much easier Nucs are? Some happy little bees over here. Good old Bob Ross. Get those bees down. And slowly get this over so we try to avoid crushing any bees. All right. That's pretty easy. Let's get into these packages really quick. Now we're going to be tinkering with a different lid design. It's not the end of the world for us. I know a lot of people, it frustrates to have lids that'll bow and bees can get in and out of. I propped this one up because they were already doing a little bit, and because it was so thin, they were losing pollen baskets and dropping them on the ground, so I just opened it up. But we're going to be building a different, it's kind of a similar style lid, but building a little bit differently and seeing how well that works and dipping them, and I will let you know how that works for me this year. Excuse me. All that food from this morning is getting to me. All right. That's looking pretty good. See how much, these kind of look yellower, don't they? Those other ones have more carny genetics from Michael Palmer's side, and I have some darker bees in my line as well. You can see this one does not have its green bottom board. We robbed it, and there was a colony that we needed to see how many mites were going to fall down, because I did an alcohol wash and I found out that they were just really high, and I was really glad that I did that. They're old swarm of bees that we got. Whoop. They're messing around with the comb a little bit in here. Bees will do that. It's something. You can have 100 colonies starting to draw comb on some great wax foundation, and then all of a sudden they'll just decide to get creative every now and then. So we're going to deal with that here in a second. See how they're doing. Okay. Well, would you look at that? They're superseding their queen. And here I was bragging on Wilbanks the other day. Alright, look at this right here. That's a really good pattern. Fairly decent pattern. There's a little food down in there and whatnot. There's a bee with pollen. However, for whatever reason, they don't like this queen, and they're superseding her. However, I do see eggs. This is not a case of swarming. They have no reason to swarm. But there's something with this queen. And that's the problem with packages. And I was kind of hoping we would get one like that. When we started our business several years ago and we expanded from what we already had, we got, I think, 135 or so packages. And I kind of knew it was coming, but we expected about a 10 to 15% loss. Now see, look at that brood right there. She's laying, but whether her pheromone production's off, something is off about that queen. She's laying on this next frame over here. Now, what do you do in a situation like this? Let it ride out. This is one of the biggest problems with packages. Look at these old bees right here. See how they're just kind of wore out. They're kind of dull looking and they're losing hair. Those are really old bees. They get senior discounts whenever they go in and out of the hive. Alright, I mean, it's interesting because the queen has been laying pretty well. Bees don't like her. And that's a problem with commercial mating. She probably didn't get bred good enough. And it's the commercial beekeepers, it's not all their fault, because a lot of hobbyists and stuff want their bees early in the year. I want my bees early in the year. Alright, make sure the queen's not on here. Shake those bees. We got to straighten this out. So we're just going to take this down. Alright, hang on a second. Attention span of a goldfish, that boy. He's smart though, whenever you can get him to focus. Alright, so we just straighten that out a little bit. Stick it back in there. So we are going to see how this one works on its supersedure. Very interesting. The queen very well could be in there. She probably is. I saw eggs. And sometimes they will can her right away in a situation like this. Sometimes they will wait till after the other queen emerges, and sometimes they'll let both of them lay for a little while. I like to breed from queens that are healthy and strong and will requeen themselves very good. But we don't breed from them immediately. They still need to be evaluated for a while because we have other things we need to see. Let's get that other frame back in there. Alright. Well, that wasn't exactly what we wanted to see, but that'll be very educational for all of us to see what's going on with that supersedure. And that is why I had that all the way over. That's not quite correct bee space because of this feeder throws it out a little bit. There we go. Yeah, it makes it really tight. It'll work. Alright. Yeah, I'll find that stick later. Well, let's see what's going on in the world of this one. Alright. This one looks much stronger. Speed things up a little bit here. This video's getting a little longer. Alright, they're drawing all the way out to the 6th frame. That's really good. This one probably got the lion's share of the drifting bees. There's eggs all down in there. See if you can see those. Okay. Stronger hives draw better than weaker colonies. Genetically diverse bees draw comb better than colonies that are less genetically diverse. Now look at the honey, and the other one was like this too. They have some on the outside. Look, they got a little creative over here, but they need more. They don't, and they have a little bit up in here, but they need more. They're starting to cap this on the 4th frame over. Let's deal with this really quick. Alright. Oh yeah, look at that. Got a little creative at the bottom. This is just a queen cup down here. Don't worry about that. There's nothing in there. Look at all that brood fixing to hatch out. Got an army. That other comb's just full of brood. We're going to go ahead and deal with this. Save that to melt it down so we can roll it on foundation sometime this winter. Nice clean white foundation. Hopefully they'll straighten this back out. Alright. You know, little colonies are nice and relaxing like this. Alright, go over. And we're going to feed this one probably about a quart of sugar syrup. And again, if you need to come back, you can do so in a couple days and just see how they're doing. Alright. Last but not least, this one on the right. I can't smoke this one. Alright, so this one's a little bit weaker than the one in the middle. It's more around the size of the other. They seem to be drawing their comb so far pretty good. This is the 5th frame. And I'm seeing this is almost all nectar right there. Let's see. Excuse me. Move, move, move. Alright. That is a good looking frame. Look, there's just great on all sides. There's brood on both sides. I mean, this is really all we need to see. We don't have to go too far. Just kind of make sure the combs are being built straight. Bees are looking good. You know, they're going to start capping these in the next few days, and these 2 frames right here are probably all capped brood. So these things are fixing to start growing, but they're going to keep shrinking until that point. Oh yeah, look at all that brood. Alright, so they're growing, they're doing what we need them to. They need just a little bit more feed. A little feed can go a long way. Just depends on your location. One thing I want to mention, if you are up north and your hiving package is in an area where there's not a pollen flow or a nectar flow, they're going to need more feed than what I have to feed. And especially when it comes to pollen patties, you might really need to give them quite a bit, because if they don't have that protein, they can't raise brood. And if they can't go out and fly, they can't get it. So feeding them a little bit of protein supplement can really make the difference on how quickly your bees will grow. If you have any comments or questions on our videos, please feel free to do so. Thanks for watching.